Welcome to Labor Talks. I'm the host, Laurie Gruber. Today's special guest is James Dunning, and James currently serves as an Eau Claire County Board Supervisor from District 18. Welcome
correct.
to Labor Talks, Jim.
Glad to meet you.
It's good to have you here. For the viewing audience, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Well, I have my background is as an engineer. I graduated with a mechanical engineering degree from South Dakota State University and spent a number of years working in the computer industry for Control Data Corporation, which was one of the original supercomputer companies. And after a number of years there, I ended up at I bought a hardware store and ended up being in the retail business in Shakopee area for a number of years. And then due to circumstances beyond my control, due to the businesses changing and that, I got out of the hardware business. And because my engineering degree was not adequate after 12 years of being out of the field, I went back to school and got a master's in environmental public health from UWEC. And then went to work for the Ho-Chunk Nation as their environmental engineer. So I spent until retirement then as an environmental engineer for the Ho-Chunk Nation, where I worked with their water systems and their wastewater systems and any environmental issue that they might have. And so that was working for them, and then now in retirement, then I've been now basically working for the county as part of a county board member. So that's my background. I've been involved in a lot of environmental issues throughout my career. So.
When I drive around the state, I see a lot of property that Ho-Chunk owns.
Yes, they have quite a number of
And I think
property.
a lot of people think the Dells, but no, they have Madison, they have Wittenberg, and I'm sure you probably were involved when they built Nakusa, when they built they had a gas station forever in Wittenberg, and then they built it's close to my mom and dad, and then they built the casino, and now they built the hotel. So,
yes. And
that's in an area where there's a lot of nice water and stuff like that, so I'm sure they had to deal with.
Yes, and I worked with their wastewater systems and as well as their drinking water systems for the health department at that time. The casino wasn't built while I was there, so they were planning it, but it wasn't done.
I used to go like once a month, take my mommy to the casino. You currently serve as the county supervisor for District 18. Can you tell those of us who don't know where District 18 is?
Well, District 18 is a very small district. It starts at State Street and is north of Claremont Avenue on the west side of State Street. So it's the bluff area where CVTC is at, all of the dormitories, Sacred Heart Hospital, St. Francis Apartments. That's my neighborhood. There are 9 houses, an apartment house, and 4,000 students. So that's it.
Definitely not permanent residents.
That's correct.
What issues do you feel are currently most important for the county board to address?
Well, there's a number of issues, and they all end up coming back to money as being the primary issue of the county. But what's causing that is, are a number of issues. One is roads, the condition of the roads in the county. We've had a very poor rating, PACER rating, for a number of years, and it was getting worse. And so we've had to take steps to improve our roads, and it's coming along real good. We've got a really good department that's working on that, and that's coming. We also have a lot of problems with the drug issues, the methamphetamines. And when that happens, it increases the workload in our Human Services Department, as well as in our jails, as well as in our court systems. And those are areas that are very, in the case of Human Services, if there's drugs involved in a home and there are kids there, the kids are either temporarily, in some cases, long-term removed from homes, and we pay for that. And those are issues that are really serious, and that starts another generation of problems. And then the jail, of course, is we have the new jail has been there now 7 years or so, and but we have to have programs within the jails in order to prevent them from coming back again. And those are issues that are the big ones. And that's the ones that affect us people-wise immediately. The long-term issues, I think, are sustainability. What is this county going to look like in 30 years? What's going to happen? What will be the issues that will come as a result of the weather changes, of climate change? Will the farmers in Kansas quit and come to Wisconsin? Will there be farmland in Wisconsin for them to farm? Those are some the future issues that we are looking at. So,
as a former farmer's daughter, I know that at one point Farm Preservation Act was no lot smaller than 20 acres. It's a lot smaller than that now. And it's like you certainly can't have a farm on less than 5 acres of land, unless it's just a hobby farm. And to see people being able to, when I drive down the road and I see a big, beautiful house in the middle of a field, I'm like, oh, what a waste. That's a field. My parents buried rocks to make fields. So for them, people put a house out in the middle of a field. It's sad for me to see that we're not, and the agriculture's gone down so bad in our state. You're currently on the board for Treehouse. Can you tell us about Treehouse?
Actually, Treehouse, it's Treehouse.
Treehouse.
It was a nonprofit that my stepdaughter founded for working with health issues for people in the area. And it's since been, wouldn't say deactivated, but it is not in an operation at the current time. So that's she has other areas that she is working in, but it's not a nonprofit. Right. So.
And then you've been involved in fighting Bobfest in the past.
Yes.
Do you see that coming back? I attended. We had a booth there, and I thought it was really a blast.
Fighting Bobfest was fun. We were part of a committee that we had a practice year 1 year, and then we actually made it go for 2 years up at the Northern Wisconsin Fairgrounds, and it was a fun time. But no, after we wore out, it was a lot of work. After we wore out, there weren't people to take our place, and it was still in Madison. They still had it in Baraboo or in Madison, depending upon the year. And there were people there. And then when Ed Garvey died, a different group took over, and it's still going. There's still one coming up in September. So. It was a fun time, but it was a lot of work. So I don't see it coming back here, although you never know. It could. They did move around the state a little. So
I've found that infiltrates a lot of things where you have a wonderful event, but the same people are doing all the work all the time. And when they burn out, nobody's willing to step up. Is there a way that we can get younger people involved for them to step in and help?
Well, there probably is. We had some young people helping us, but they generally have careers that they're pushing. And so with those of us who were nearing the end of careers didn't have as much to push.
Well, and they don't think about it sometimes. It's like, okay, so they think retarees have lots of time.
Yes.
Retirees don't have lots of good health to be able to do those things. So. You also serve on the board for PACE Wisconsin, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us about PACE? Because I know you mentioned about a PACER.
PACE is a financing program that the state of Wisconsin, as well as many other states, have implemented. Property assessed clean energy is what the acronym of PACE stands for. Property assessed clean energy for PACE. And what it does is provides lower interest rates on loans to companies that are wanting to improve their buildings or create buildings for water use as well as clean air. And so electrical use anyway, anything that's environmentally friendly with water and air issues. A lot of times if you have our current projects are a lot of times are older hotels that they want to upgrade. Well, upgrading it with putting in new windows, putting in new water systems, upgrading all the toilets, upgrading all of the systems, air conditioning, the heating systems is very expensive.
LED lights.
LED lights, it's very expensive, and sometimes it isn't worth the development at current loan rates. And properties, they can get a lower interest rate. The county then, it's then put on as property assessed there. So if there is for some reason a foreclosure, it goes on the county would go into collecting, just like they would on a normal homeowner that doesn't pay their mortgage. So it goes there. Now, it doesn't cost the county anything, but it's a benefit to the county because it increases the property values, et cetera.
And with that in mind, I know you're interested in low-cost loans for energy efficiency, renewable energy, and water conservation projects. Have you seen any advancement of those areas in our legislation?
It's been slow. Within the last year now, we've seen a renewed interest in our water quality. The governor has set up some programs. There are now some counties that have realized that their water quality is a problem. St. Croix County, Dunn County, counties in the southern part of the state have some real serious water quality problems. And the state is now getting involved in that and is helping out on costs for new wells or deeper wells or treatment, that type of stuff, or even to a certain extent prevention of issues. So that is improved. There are also some tax implications based on clean energy type programs. Some of those are privately based with the energy companies funding it, but there still is some of it that the state looking at that does it with your automobile. If you got an electric auto, there was some benefits for that. So yes, there have been. It isn't as much as we need, but it's a start.
Well, I know we looked into solar energy, putting solar panels on our roof.
Mm-hmm.
When we have Xcel Energy in our area, where Xcel is one of the best companies for buying excess electricity. But there weren't any real good tax incentives in Wisconsin to do that. Now,
Right.
Minnesota does, but Minnesota also has places that make those panels.
Yes.
And I've noticed that Xcel Energy also has a thing where people can sign in to get their energy from one of these solar farms.
Yes.
What can we do to educate our taxpayers about the benefits of wind farms, the benefits of solar farms, so that they're not looking at and coming forward and fighting just because of the noise? Or I had someone tell me that the nuclear fallout from the wind farms is worse than a nuclear power plant, and I'm like, excuse me?
Yes, there's a lot of, I have a stack of information about that high from the folks in the southern part of the county who have been opposing the wind program.
Yep.
And so I understand that some of that probably has some validity, but a good portion of it does not. So education is what it's going to take. We need to educate people. We need to get companies like Xcel to come in and talk to us about that, or whether it's the developer. As a result of I grew up on a farm, and when my parents when we closed down their estates, the farm became my sister's and mine. And my mother had always wanted a wind generator on the farm, so we ended up, when Xcel was a developing company, came in with 134 wind generators in southwest Minnesota. We got one of them on our farm, and so we had it for a number of years before we sold the farm. But it was a real additive to the farm fields. It only took an acre or so of farmland. You could farm over the driveway. I mean, you couldn't plant over the driveway, but you could drive over.
But I mean, but the farmers would get some money for that. And from what I understand,
very nice.
from what I understand, each one of those can create enough electricity for like up to 600 homes.
Yes.
Why wouldn't we want it?
Yes. Well, there are some issues with them in creating, and I'm not certain how, if the location in Eau Claire County is the right location. The area where our farm was at, the areas of southwest Minnesota, all across the southern border of Minnesota, down into Iowa, there aren't a lot of people. And there's a lot of land that's open. And in Eau Claire County, we have a lot of 10 acres and 20-acre plots. And it's hilly. And that creates getting roads into the towers, because you have to have a road to each tower. That creates problems. You take a lot of trees down, and there are the people who complain that we're stripping the trees in order to pay for a cheaper electricity.
But as farmers close down because they can't afford to keep running their farms, and rather than necessarily renting it out to crop farmers, or like especially if you drive through central Wisconsin where a lot of it was potatoes, and that's all flat, lots of wind.
Yes,
it's certainly a way to do it.
There's certainly locations that would apply to that, yes. So.
And you don't see as much of the wind farms here as you do in Minnesota and some of the other places.
Because it's, when I can look for 20 miles and not see a hill, it's a little different than here. And I would hope that there was a way, and I don't know that we can do it on a county basis, but I would hope there would be a way for people to get some type of funding or grants where they could put that solar on their home. Yes. Generally that's been state and federal that's worked with that. I don't know about much federal, but the state and sometimes federal gets involved when it becomes giving permits for long distance power lines, etc. So they do get there.
Because we put on one of these new roofs that adds to the value of the house, and I'd love to be able to do, if I was going to build a house again now, I'd want a geothermal floor, and I'd want solar, and we burn pellets,
yes.
which is a byproduct, which, it's a recycled product, to be able to keeping our air clean.
Yes, yes.
And our water clean. As a current board member, what committees do you sit on?
Well, the one that probably has the most visibility is the Finance and Budget Committee. I've been on that for a number of years, and we develop the budgets every year, and or at least we review the budgets. The departments develop them, and we, based on what programs, it's based on what our goals and stuff are as a county. The administrator develops it along with the department heads. We review it and critique it and said, yes, this does do what we're wanting it to do as a county, and approve it. I'm also on the Planning and Development Committee, which works with the Land Conservation Department, the Solid Waste and Recycling, the Land Records. We also have all of the administration of building permits and inspections and for the rural areas outside the city. And so zoning requirements, whether we have, part of the master plan for the county. And so that, I'm also on the Metropolitan Planning Organization, MPO, which controls the federal funds that come to the area for roads and trails and emergency things we categorize roads and that need it, and then apply for the federal funds, and then they come and county ends up using the money, but either Chippewa County or Eau Claire County, and they're the ones who implement the roads. So those two. I'm also I'm on a subcommittee of the Planning and Development as the Groundwater Committee. I've been on that for the whole time I've been on the board, and there we've been looking at our groundwater and trying to determine quantity and quality, and I've been on. Those are the assigned ones, and I've been on a variety of others. Transportation committees. I was on the Gateway Corridor Committee that looked at. The need for transportation between here and St. Paul, and that's where we looked at rail, we've looked at bus, we've looked at a variety of things. Outside of the board, I'm on the West Central Wisconsin Rail Coalition, and we've been looking at high-speed trains for here as well as commuter rail. And because one of Minnesota's priorities is to get a train from St. Paul to Eau Claire, and we're getting closer.
As a couple who lives along the highway, where my husband goes that way and I come this way, we're big believers in having that high speed, either the high speed or the commuter. What do we need to do? Who do we need to educate it to show them the importance of that? And then that also then will help keep our roads better longer.
Well, it's a combination. It's first of all is a state issue. I mean, a number of years back, we had the opportunity to extend the rail from Madison to Milwaukee, and that funding was returned to the federal government. Most of this is going to be federal funding to get it started. Operations, theoretically and hopefully, will be private. And the Great Northern or the Union Pacific is interested now that sand mines have kind of fallen off. They're interested in looking at passenger. So that will happen. But state level, one of the big things that we could use right now would be regional transit authorities, RTAs. We had that at one time, and before we got a chance to use it, it disappeared. And we could use it again, because if you did have a train from here to St. Paul, you need to coordinate the communities to not to operate it, but to control it. There would be a private operator, but you still need to work the towns and the counties in a unified pattern of operation.
Well, and we had a governor at the time who didn't believe that we needed those kinds of jobs.
That's right.
We didn't need that. I would think any job creation is good. And coming from labor, as the secretary of the Labor Council, and our president of the Labor Council is a big believer in transit, how can they say that that's not a job we don't want? Or how can they say it's a job we don't want? Any job is good.
Yes. I don't know that they've looked at it as jobs. In fact, to a certain extent, it would go both ways. We know that JAMF has an office in the Twin Cities as well as here, and they send their people back and forth frequently. They would love to have a train so that their employees could work while they're traveling as opposed to driving. And because they send employees both ways on a regular basis, I gather. And so we've got support from them. We're looking at others who commute to the Twin Cities to work, or we've got people from the Twin Cities that commute to Eau Claire. So
anybody that's flown out of the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport that's along I-94 knows that there is a shuttle service.
That's right.
That can pick them up. Whereas if they had a train that would bring them in,
it would bring them into St. Paul and then from there to the airport or there. One of the things that's new in transportation that we're looking at, in fact, I'm working on a resolution right now for the county to support a shuttle bus from Eau Claire to Tomah.
for the VA?
Well, no, actually to meet the Amtrak.
Okay.
Amtrak goes from St. Paul to Chicago and other points, but Tomah is a site to get on if you're going east. And so we're looking at that as an opportunity. The Amtrak is proposing to set up a second train, which would end up with two going in each direction, 2 trains a day going in each direction. So there'd be more of a need to have people getting on in Tomah if you're going to go east. So that's something we're working on. So
when I go from my place to La Crosse, I go down the Minnesota side along the river, and so I see the Amtrak trains.
Yes.
I think part of the problem is that they're old, they're slow, but they're running the same rails that the freight trains are running on. They need their own rails.
And that is a problem that the rails companies can fix, but it takes additional. We're even to put a commuter train or a train from Eau Claire to St. Paul would probably, in some cases, need some extra track added. so that the freight doesn't get slowed as much and the passenger can run on schedule. So though it would take some extra work and some extra construction, but there are, in some cases, federal grants to help with that, and so that's an issue, but it's certainly a solvable issue.
Anybody who's worked or studied in Europe, for instance,
Yes.
sees how good the train system is and the transit system is. And I believe that everybody should take an Autobahn driving course,
Yes.
so they know what the left lane is for on the highway. But for us to be able to educate people on how those trains could be good if we're so far behind.
Yeah, I've ridden the train from Vienna to Rome, which is a high-speed train, and 2 stops, and it's several hundred miles an hour. It's really great.
And then people are just like, "Oh, we don't have any need for that." That's not true. You don't see the highway problems over there that we have.
And maybe I was thinking the other day that maybe one of the reasons why Europe is ahead of us on trains is the fact that they don't have the interstate system like we do. We had some people in the 50s that looked at this country and said, we need better transportation methods, and they built the interstate system. Now, that was hard for the trains,
Right.
because we got into cars at the same time. And now we're looking at the interstate system is 60 years old. And so we're looking at roads that are and bridges that are out of
Fracture critical.
Right, they're very critical, and they're not necessarily going to where they needed to go. And trains now can possibly serve that purpose. So,
Well, and like I said, I'm a big believer. I think anybody that lives along Highway 94 that drives either that way or this way, especially on a Friday night
yes,
or on a Sunday night, we need the train. Now, you're currently up for re-election for District 18.
yes.
Are there any, especially after the election, is there specifically things that you really want your constituents to know you want to work on?
Well, my things that I've been working on, when I have the opportunity, is sustainability. Another director and our supervisor and I wrote the resolution with the assistance of the city to get the resolution or the sustainability resolution approved by the county. And that has been approved about a year ago. That was approved about a year ago. And now we're in the process of trying to determine the carbon level, that our starting point, because if we're going to meet our level in 2050, we need to know where we are today so we know when we've reached it. And so that is what we're working on, and I believe that because of my past experience, my education, my background on this, that I have the capability of working with sustainability and to improving that. And I've been meeting with student organizations, and I know that they are gung-ho for this, and that I'm really, I have the experience and can immediately get going on this. To bring the sustainability to the county, and I think that's something that we need. So that is my prime reason, and within the sustainability is groundwater also. We need good groundwater, and if that it means we have to regulate CAFOs in some manner, or if we have to regulate sand mines, which we have tried to do, so. Or whatever the next generation of product is.
And I think, like you said, when you've got that many students who live in your area, for them to take an interest in where they're living now, not where they grew up, but that might be a way to get them to come move to this area permanently. And
yes, that is a possibility, because the next generation of the equipment that we're going to need for sustainability probably hasn't been designed yet. And that will be the next generation of, that's what our college students are doing, is they're learning what is needed to be done, and they will go to work for companies that can do it. And,
or create companies
that can do it.
And that's what we need.
That's what we need.
Well, and we could talk forever, Jim. We're running out of time. My thanks to our viewing audience and Jim for who made today's program possible. My thanks also to our fellows here at Valley Media Works who give us the show, but also give us a voice for working families. And the show is aired twice weekly on Channel 993, and you can also find us on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in.